In this video, I'm going to talk to you about wedging, rolling out a slab, slipping and scoring, but mostly I'm going to talk about assembling a slab box because that's one of the projects that you have the option of doing. When I give you the clay out of the bag, it's usually going to not look like this. I have started to wedge my clay. Normally, I wedge my clay as the very first step. Some of you guys, it might be helpful to pack it into a ball before you start wedging. But this clay is starting to get a little dry, which is going to be good for our purposes today, but it means that I can't do quite as much wedging with it. But I will show you generally how that looks. You want to make a press with your hands like this, okay? I'm not pushing straight down, I'm not pushing straight forward. I'm pushing at a 45-degree angle. Then I'm going to give it a hug, kind of pull it up on its side. Do another press, pull it up on its side. At some point, it's going to get a little bit longer this direction, so I'm going to flip it and I'm going to roll out the slab this way. At this point, if you are rolling out a slab, which is what we are going to do for this project, I'm going to start to flatten this out. So I'm going to kind of flatten it by pinching and twisting it. Do some of the heavy lifting before I start rolling out my slab. Now this is what mine looks like before I start rolling out my slab. It's going to look a lot of different ways depending on how you had it to start. At this point, I have a lot of clay, and I'm doing this so I can demonstrate some different things to you. You're going to have a little bit less than this. But now I'm going to take my dowels, I'm going to put it on either side of my clay, and I'm going to start to roll out my slab. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my slab so that I know that I'm getting even texture on both sides. So I have my slab completely rolled out. The next thing I'm going to do is take a rib on top of it and kind of smooth out some of the imperfections. And I am also going to try and get rid of any air pockets that are underneath. The next thing I'm going to do, I have multiple template options for you, okay? The one that I'm going to do is going to be this kind of rectangular shape. I also have some square templates that you can use. You can use really any tool to start cutting out. I'm going to actually use this embossing tool. You want to make sure that you're getting the most use out of your clay, so you're not putting this right in the center so that you would have to roll out another slab. So in a class period, I am only expecting that you get this far. So that means you'll have 4 pieces for the actual original structure. Now, some of you who are doing triangles, that might mean that you have 3. If you're doing a cylindrical box, then you would just have 1 like this and you would wrap it around. But for me, I have 4. At this point, because you are probably close to the end of the class period, you would want to actually create your sides, okay? Now, they are going to fit together much nicer if we have clean edges that are going to attach to each other on all 4 of these. So in order to do that, I'm going to take a knife or a tool similar that is going to be sharp enough, and I'm going to add an angle, not straight up and down, not like totally from the side, but about 45 degrees. I'm going to come over, and I'm just going to slice it off like that. And I'm going to do the same thing to all sides. These do not have to be perfect, okay? In fact, I would suggest the best time to do this would be during the leather hard stage, because when I am carving it, it is going to stick to itself a little bit more. However, like right here, it's going to kind of bring a little bit of an edge with it. If you have time, I would always suggest to do this at the end of whenever you make the first slabs, just because it's going to save us a little bit of time in the future. These edges do not have to be perfect, they just need to be beveled enough to where they will fit together. So at this point, if it was the end of a class period, then I would take my slab I would do on top of my wear board, okay, I'm gonna lay one of my slabs on there. I'm gonna take a paper towel. I would spray this paper towel just like that. I would take my second slab, lay it on top of that, take another paper towel, spray that paper towel, and continue that process until these are all stacked. Once that is done, I would put it in my plastic bag and wrap it up. But these need to be stacked in between paper towels so they don't get stuck to each other. Once it has reached the leather hard stage, which should take about a class period, don't overspray in between class periods with that water, because we do want this to start to harden a little bit. We do have a blow dryer that we can use to dry it up a little bit more, but we want it basically to be firm enough to where this is not going to overly bend. The next thing I'm going to do is score all of the sides of my piece, and I'm just going to score the parts that have been beveled. So at this point, I have all of my sides scored. After that, I'm going to take some slip, and I'm only going to apply it to the sides that I know I am going to use for construction. And I'm always going to start with the base plus 2 sides. So I'm going to take these two, and I'm just going to sort of push them together. If you are in the leather hard stage, as you should be at this point, then this part should stand up on its own fairly well. And so the only part you're really worried about is where it is connecting. The next thing I am going to do is get my second side, or I suppose my third side, and I'm going to put slip on this edge and this edge where they are going to connect. And I'm kind of just pushing these edges together. At this point there is a gap here. That is where I want to start filling that with a coil. So while I am constructing the sides, I'm not going to wait until the last step or it's not going to fit. So I'm going to take a little bit of clay, I'm going to roll out a coil. I'm going to take a coil about this size, and I am going to add a little bit of slip into the crevice here, into this one here, and this one here. And then I'm going to lay my coil on the inside and just kind of push it down in there. So I want one here for all of the sides that have been attached. Depending on how this side looks is going to affect whether you are going to put a coil here. Now I think that mine should have one because there's a little bit too much of a gap. I'm going to add more slip to my coils. And here I am going to start blending it in. You can do so with your finger or a tool. Something like this would do very nicely. Now I'm going to repeat the process with the other 3 sides. Now what I have done is make this lid. I have actually only made it half the size of my box because I kind of have a vision going on here. Maybe you can guess what that is. But this part is the lid and it will be removable. Now you could do exactly what I did, okay, which means you have this kind of edge here that you've created either with coils or with little slabs, and you've built it up so that it sits right on the edge, okay? The other way to do it is to build this entire top and cut our side to where this would be the lid and this would be the base. If we were going to do that, however, we need some sort of a loop or a bevel or something so that when you sit it on top, it doesn't just slide and shift everywhere. We want it to stay in the exact correct place. So option 1 is to do a lid that has coils set up like this. Option 2 would be to cut into the side of your box, maybe here, and create a nice lid out of what you've already made. So the box is here, and this would be your lid, and this would be your base. The last thing that I would want to do with this is any of my texture and additions, and specifically with this one I would want to work a little bit on my craftsmanship. So that looks like smoothing out these edges, cleaning out all of the gunk in here, making this a little bit straighter, a little bit smoother, and then from there you can do your texture and your additions if you are planning to do something like that.